The Outback town of Winton is its name. You can take a peaceful stroll round Combo Waterhole, see Matilda's ghost go waltzing by. You can hear old banjo say as you walk along your way, you can get some yellow belly if you try.
In the early days, this was part of the plan to drought-proof the West. We had some civic fathers who wanted to grow the visitor numbers to bring outside money into town, and this was an integral part of that bigger plan.
Winton, in the first festival was held in August 1972, and Winton was experiencing its worst drought in living memory. And we had a meeting. We formed a tourist association seeing the potential of Winton in tourism. And there's also in town a subnormal association, which was later became the Endeavour Foundation. And the president of that was interested in tourism, and he said, well, let's run some type of function. And so we put our heads together and came up with the concept of the Outback Festival.
You know, when people talked about tourism in Australia, they just thought of Bondi Beach and the Gold Coast and places like that. Nobody, especially people who lived out in these areas, we just couldn't believe that anyone would actually want to come out here for a holiday, you know. But we didn't know what we had. And
so we all got together and said, let's make this festival one of the most unique things in Outback Australia. And sure enough, it became one of the most iconic events of the Outback. It ran for initially 10 days, and it just about killed us. We ran it the next year in 1973. We just couldn't handle the workload it did to everybody. So we decided to put it on every 2 years, and it has been doing that since 73, every 2 years from 73.
And it grew so big so quickly that after the first 2 years they had to revert to every second year because it just took so much organisation.
It is, that's right. And the festival, I wasn't here when it started, but it started as a community event just for fun and so on. It's developed far beyond that now. It's still fun and so on, but it's a lot of money involved in raising funds and so on and so on. And I find more people appreciate it now than did, as I say, 20 years ago, because they're just happy to poke along, but now they see the benefits.
This one, ours, would have to be the longest running. Years ago, everyone had a festival. Rockhampton had the Capricornia Festival, I think. Cairns had Fun in the Sun. Brisbane had Warana. But they've all fallen by the wayside over the years. Whereas, well, now, as I say, I think it was 71 was the first festival, and now we're in 2019, and it's still going strong every second year. Yeah.
We've had a lot of fun times. We've had a lot of times where we've struggled with the event. The event has been a challenge, because where we live in the Outback, it's always been a challenge, not only with infrastructure or whatever to hold the event.
So I came to Winton for 1 month to work at the Tats Hotel in 1985 for the Outback Festival. Had an absolute ball, even though I worked the whole time, and just loved the sense of the place. And I had known about the Outback Festival from, saw it in the Pix People and the Post magazines and their quirky Grand Parade, and it just touched my sense of humour, I think, and so that's why I was keen to come out and work here. So, of course, I did the 4 weeks, but I just loved the place so much that I decided to stay.
The Outback Festival, I truly believe in my heart, it's the soul of this community. It represents the people. It's been going for, well, it's the 25th anniversary coming up now, and for all those years, for a biennial event, it's pretty amazing. The community raffles around it, and it brings back many people. In the short time I've been here, it brings back so many people, and people relate to it. I can go anywhere in Australia and people know about this festival. It's amazing.
The West is, and the Western people are known for their hospitality. And even during the festival, I think that's still evident by all the people who've come back still have that within their own character. And a lot of people may not do many of the activities, but simply the atmosphere is so welcoming and engaging.
We never had any problem. Everybody was happy. You know, I can't ever recall seeing a fight, an argument, or if it was a nice, quiet, you sorted it out. It was great. Everyone just sort of did as they wanted, you know, just all joined in. We used to dance in the street.
But I think just as important in my observations is that it gives us who have a link with Winton an excuse to come back every couple of years and meet mates and families and go to the cemeteries and things like that and just re-establish links with Winton.
We didn't cater for tourists so much. I mean, it's a great tourist destination now, but back then, in the beginning, it was everybody come home and see the family. We're going to have fun for a week. And it was a back to Winton week, whereas now, I mean, obviously we are aimed, we're part of the tourism industry. It's a different concept these days. Yeah.
I think the festival has turned into more like a coming home, a family reunion type event. A lot of the people who do come back for the festival are usually either past residents or family members or friends of family, and it's really great to see all the families together again and people you've met, like, you know, in 1972 when it first started, and you think, oh, well, I know that face, but I'm not quite sure. And they've been coming back for years and years.
Families like to come home. Like, Mum loved to get everybody home at our place, you know. Oh, there's 9 of us, and you can imagine in a house where 4 people used to live, and then they're all home. But that's what happens. Like, it's a family event. If you're going to come home to Winton, you come home then. I've got school friends that still come home, you know.
Originally, it seemed to be just a reunion for ex-Wintonites, like people that lived here any time over the last 50 years or so would come back for that. Originally the 10 days in September. The Truckies reunion is a great crowd attractor for the festival. A lot of people come back for that, so without the Truckies reunion, there wouldn't be as many people here for the festival, and then also the festival give the Truckies a great place to do that and accommodate them, and a lot of trucks in the parade on the final day, which they all seem to love it. They have their own trucks, and then also a lot of the ones in the museum, just the Truckies jump in them and drive them, and yeah, they have a ball driving down the street, waving to everybody and honking the horns and that, so no, it's really good.
And every 2 years, Truckies come and they just swell the town. They double population just with the Truckies virtually. Massive parade and demonstrations with the old trucks and all that sort of thing. It's been a great part of the town. So their museum now, it gets visitors all day, you know, it's quite good.
We'll welcome you all, mate. You'll see footers on our train set the record once again. Australia's longest certified road train. You'll see 'em bucking from the chute, Truckies muster and class you, and racing thoroughbreds out on the plain. You'll see tracks from dinosaurs that like quarry tracks galore, while Tilden's legend back in town lives on. That's one
I've been involved with the Winton Outback Festival since I was 5 years old, and I'm still involved now in my mid-40s. It's Goanna Be Great is still the slogan for the festival, and the whip-cracking goanna is still the mascot after all this time. I became involved by the community noticing my frequent drawing and painting habit, and I was asked to make the posters and the marketing material. The community encouraged me as a child to be involved with that side of the festival, and I find that really incredible. Back then, everything was an in-house production in the 70s and the 80s, so if we imagined it or dreamed it, we built it.
We've had young children here over the years that have never had a whip in their hands, and we've had a professional whip cracker that came and did workshops, and he came for something like 10, 15 years to the Outback Festival to teach people how to crack a whip. And you've got those people now that came here many, many years ago, those young children now are grown men coming back here to compete in the Outback Whip Cracking Championships.
We used to start and finish with a huge ball. One was usually the Flying Doctor, because we hosted the Queen of the Outback competition here, so every 2 years they'd come back to Winton and announce the Queen of the Outback, which was a fundraiser basically for that great cause, the Flying Doctor.
In the early days, it was something that you looked forward to. The road to Longreach in those early days was only bitumen. It wasn't bitumen, dirt road. And we had ABC television. If you had television in those days, of course, it was black and white. And therefore, Winton was always an us community. If something needed to be done, you organised it. So having a ball was something you knew everyone would be coming to. And whoever was going to be the beneficiaries, because someone would get the profits, you would offer to help. And therefore, working behind a bar, helping with catering, was always a team effort. It was never a chore, and there was always a big crowd, and you could be stomping your feet behind the bar, and you knew that, in half an hour you'd be out there, someone would come in and you could go for a dance. Lots and lots of fun. Before the preparation, the actual balls, but the atmosphere was always lots of fun.
I think the one that sticks in my mind most is that we've got a big water tower, of course. Winton relies entirely on bore water, and we have a water tower in town. And that welcoming beacon that we had a rotating light on top of it, of the water tower, and you could see it for miles away. And as people came into Winton, he was just like a welcoming lighthouse across the Western Plains. And that was a pretty memorable occasion, and there was such excitement, like when we had our kids in coming back to Winton for the festival. They were so excited to be able to see that lighthouse on top of the water tower saying, hey, the festival's on, come on in, we're going to have a good time.
In motor cars and big road trains, coaches, campers, bikes and planes, they're heading for the Outback once again. To a town that comes alive, full of heritage and pride. The Outback town of Winton is its name. For its Outback Festival.
One of the main events that occurred for many years was staged out at Mistake Creek, and it was a combined schools day, and it was very, much of a family day. The kids all went out there. It started with a push bike ride. The kids rode their push bikes from town out to Mistake Creek, and then they had things like raft races and billy boiling competitions and cowpat throwing, and the money raised went to both schools, both local Winton schools. It was a big operation. A lot of the parents and teachers had to volunteer. Everything you needed to put on a day had to be taken out to the creek, generators, cold rooms, everything to cook food and provide food. And people were there for the whole day, from about 8 o'clock in the morning till late in the afternoon.
When the tourist buses came through, there was the Pelican push. So each tourist bus that came through, from one start, they had the stock and station agents come out with whips to crack, pretend, to get them moving along. And the buses all the participants on the bus got a badge, and so there was that sort of quirky involvement. We always had the egg throwing, the broom throwing, the wool bale rolling, things that were quite, outback. I can remember seeing the Queensland Symphony Orchestra out on the clay pans, which was just fabulous, and being in Outback, and we'd been through a period of drought, and it had to be with Murphy's Law that it rained that night, and all these instruments and things everyone was running for cover because speakers and instruments had to be covered. But yeah, hearing the symphony orchestra out in the Claypan was pretty special.
We had a competition called Henley by Mistake. I don't know, thinking back at how unsophisticated things were, and yet they were enjoyable. Our Henley by Mistake simply involved, would you believe it, a shearer's stretcher, which is the wire-based stretcher, carried by 4 runners, sitting on a chair on the stretcher with the legs poked through the holes was a lady who carried a glass supposedly containing rum, why I don't know, containing water. And the idea was you raced across the creek, this side of the creek through the water to the other side, and the lady who had the most water left in her glass was the winner. Now, I mean, doesn't that seem a bit odd now? But Henley by Mistake was one of our events on Outback Day.
What I found amazing, I just thought the town was full of a lot of people with beards when I first came here. And it wasn't until after the festival finished and didn't realise they were all in the beard growing competition, and they didn't wear beards all the time. There was just, and clean, you know, fresh and clean, they looked totally different.
And then they had the beard growing competition for the festival and the hairy legs competition for the festival for the ladies. Anyway, they came and told me that they needed someone to do the ladies' gimmick with the hairy legs, because the beards used to go for 4 months or something, so they weren't going to ask people to do the hairy legs for 4 months. So Peter Evert, who was in charge of that one, he said to me, you'll have to be a bit of a gimmick and get your legs shaved. I said, oh, I've got my slacks on and stockings. It was July. He said, well, someone will have to do it. And this girl got a shearing handpiece they gave her, and he said, she won't rip your stockings. Well, she ripped the stockings and the legs and everything else just about. I said to him, no more your gimmicks. You'd kill me one of these days.
Just forget about old blue for about a week or 2. Let your beard grow thick and long. Crack a whip or roll a bed, spit the dummy, have an egg. Throw a broom, an egg, or pull a truck along. And the local Mardi Gras is the best you'll see by far. Every float of pitcher in the street, they line up that country mile, every face a friendly smile.
Well, we used to have silly things like a pub crawl, where the entrance had to go from pub to pub and buy a beer there and end up on the finishing line and see who crawled across the finishing line first. It was a silly kind of thing, which obviously would be frowned upon these days. You're not supposed to encourage people to drink when they don't need to have a drink. And then out of the pub crawl, for a couple of years, we had the Coca-Cola Cafe crawl, that we had the kids doing the same thing, but calling into each cafe on the way to buy. You could buy a little can of Coke in those days, a half-size can.
Out of Longwater Hole, when the yabbies start to crow, you can back 'em for a win or each way. You can see an Outback Lou, here's some country music too, with Australia's Dunny Derby in full flight, as the western sun goes down.
The other thing that stands in my memory is we used to have, the big thing then was the crayfish derby. Now probably we've got the dunny derby. But in those days, crayfish, you catch them in the creek, and it was the presentation, which was really theatre in the round, and different organisations, the main roads, they could easily bring in their crayfish and present it with their stable on the back of a great big truck. So one time they even flew it in with a helicopter, dropping it right down. The Evett family were always ones that you looked forward to because they would have the most incredible presentation.
Crayfish races were fantastic. They used to have them out of town a few miles, and everybody had to do a presentation to present their crayfish. And the local doctor used to vet them in the race, and we built a pirate ship once out of around a tow truck, and council would supply a truck full of water and have beach scenes and water fights, and that was all wonderful. But
so Mad Max was our cradie, our crayfish, and it was just so good. There was Mad Max, obviously, had the cradie. He had a couple of minders with him, and all the people that used to drink at the Winton, we all had like Hessian clothes on, and so and the crayfish was presented to Thunderstruck, you know, so it was a little heavy, you know, and it was just great. And the crayfish races, their presentations, and it was out at Mistake Creek. Oh, first was at Mistake Creek, and then it was at Long Waterhole, and some of them, you know, one was dropped off out of a light airplane. You know, the presentations were just absolutely amazing. It was just so much fun. But all these people and kids, you know, pushing kids in these little like half dinosaur cars going in, and oh, it was just so much fun.
We paid for $3,500 for a crayfish. We had a friend of ours who'd passed away, and his big thing in life was to win the crayfish race. So he was a truck driver. So all these truckies all came in with this money, and we bought a crayfish, and we won the crayfish race, luckily.
You simply had your 10 crayfish, you had a circular track, you lifted the lid off the crayfish, and the first one to reach the edge of the circle was the winner.
Then they used to wet the path around and throw the water, you know, right around so that the crayfish hopefully would swim out. But they didn't always do that. Some of them had a fight in the middle and all this caper, you know, and someone would be hitting them with a stick. Well, we had a big drama a couple of times, had some dramas over it. There was protests and God knows what, you know.
In my first year as a school teacher out here, the school had a crayfish, which I think was called Miss Cray, and it was like a play girl, but it was... So, of course, I got conned into coming out of a cake in very flimsy costume to present Miss Play Cray.
And that's where the crayfish races were held, in a little dry creek bed of Mistake Creek. They were always a big draw card, but eventually it got so big that they had to move the crayfish races. I think they must have actually had to dig like a dry dam with walls so that people could you know, sit up the sides and watch the crayfish races, because the creek bed just couldn't accommodate the numbers of people that were starting to come. It really, really took off.
Had fashions of the field, which was no mean show. We had some wild clothes. We used to all dress up for like a proper race meeting, you know, and you'd have all your made out of anything and everything. We'd come in on an old stagecoach or something, all the ladies in their fineries, you know. We got them from Vinnie's and wherever.
One of the things that they used to have at these crayfish races, of course, you had to have fashions of the field. And so on a couple of occasions I produced a mock fashion parade, if you sort of it was all just, you know, a bit of fun. Dresses made out of garbage bin bags and balloons, blown up balloons. One year the doctor's wife gratefully said she would wear a costume that consisted of nothing more than blown up balloons. That was because one of the things they had for the day was a lolly drop, a balloon lolly drop from a plane. And so I sort of took my inspiration from that. We had Princess Diana there, God rest her soul. with Prince William in a stroller. She was another entry in the fashions of the field. Yeah, just you know, great fun. That was another one of the highlights of the festival, was the March of the Little Swaggies. And I didn't have any children when the first festival started, but after some years I had 2 children, and they used to participate, and they would all assemble down one end of the main street, and Mr. Evett would dress as a swaggy with the hat with the corks and a swag and the whole works, you know, the billy and everything, and he would walk up the main street leading the parade and it was called the March of the Little Swaggies.
We had the March of the Swaggies, and they actually went from town. When the Waltzing Matilda Centre, they'd sort of muster there, and they would walk out to the day that they had out on the clay pans near the Long Waterhole.
Well, I don't know. We used to have our local swaggy, Leon. Yeah, Leon was the swaggy. He did absolutely look the part of the typical swaggy, and no, it was simply a matter of having Leon on hand for photographs.
The worst one we had was when we had Slim Dusty here, and it was down at the showgrounds. I had to take my specs off because it was so dusty I couldn't see. It was just full on.
We had Keith Urban as one of our stars, one of our music people who came out here. I think it was the very first year he won a golden guitar. How old was he? 20, 18? I don't know. But we had Keith Urban perform out here. We'd never be able to afford him these days, but we thought we had quite a coup there. And I remember we had Grant Kenny came out here. He did a little session down at our local swimming pool. Strangely enough, it was called The Gum Fight at the Outback Corral. So we thought we were being pretty punny about that at the time. And it simply was a bubble blowing contest. The things that we did that we enjoyed were not sophisticated in any way. They were just good fun. I mean, kids blew bubbles with bubble gum, so we had a competition.
Well, the wonderful thing about the Outback Festival in the 43 years that I've been tied up with it is that, you know, events morph over the years. Like in those days we had the Henley by Mistake, and these days we have the famous Dunny Derby. So, you know, events change a little bit over the time, so it's a bit fresher.
And the Dunny races, well, of course, they're the biggest thing of the festival. Been some terrific things there. James Evett, who's the sister of the lady who owns this place where we are now, he and his mates went as Freddie Flintstone once, and they built massive telecom cable wheels. They were the wheels, and they were as big as this house. Of course, they came last, so they got disgusted and they just poured petrol over the middle of the field and set fire. And all the crowd gathered around the bonfire, and all the other people took off.
And a lot of the names that come up that I could, you know, over the years there's been lots of funny names that have come up, like Stinkosaurus, Hot Shit, probably we've even had Harry Potter as part of the event.
Just about starters ready. Racing, they pull up the jocks and they're racing to their loos. There's Taxed Up Express, which has gone off with the Pookaroo right behind it. Savannah Sauras is itching away with the Pirates of the Caribbean, and the Runny Rumps, well, they're splurting all over the place. Taxed Up Express with the Pookaroo and the Savannah Sauras with the Runny Rumps starting to make a bit of a run now.
The biggest event that I think that we've ever have had to put some names together was when the BBC Glasgow people came to town, and they were told they had to come up with some names for their loo, which we found a couple of racing loos for them, but they had to come up with the names, and then we had to put form guide together. And I was surprised when they came back and they said, oh, yeah, we've got our names. And I said, oh, that's good. What have you come up with? And they said, well, we thought about our TV series, Doctor Who, and we thought, oh, we'll make this one Doctor Pooh. Okay. What about the next one? And they said, oh, well, we've got another television series in BBC called Top Gear. So I think we might make this one Plop Gear. So they really got into the spirit of the Australian Dunny Derby, and they were just a hilarious team to be working with, and it all went over so well that they really got into the spirit of it and live streamed that particular event straight back to the BBC in Glasgow when they raced here over the 200-metre distance.
One year, our previous CEO, his brother is a councillor down in Birdsville, and they always sort of playing tricks on each other, and they got our dunny and they hit it like nobody knew where it was, and then through the race it's going on and we're neck and neck with the team from Diamantina, and then all of a sudden their rail out front that you pulls on, it just broke in half, and that was it, they were finished. So we're not really sure if that was just accidental or there was something mischievous went on, but yeah, they're the sort of things that make it fun. It's just, it's not serious, and it's just a great night, and it just tries to bring more and more people into the area and just make the Outback Festival really inclusive, as in you want not only Winton but all the other towns in the Central West and in our neighbouring shires to come along and enjoy it as well.
Okay, on the day there's 7 or 8 venues that we attend. At each venue there's a different sort of sport. We have a range of sports from golf, football, marbles, darts, pool, cricket. There's also the Rupoo shooting and the cow dung discus. For someone who's not a local coming to the town, throwing a cow pad discus or shooting a Rupoo out of a piece of conduit, that's a one-off event, you know, like you don't really get that anywhere else. So to people coming, I think they really enjoy the social side of it, and good prize money in it. Yes, there's also the fancy dress part of the day. A lot of the entrance competitors come fancy dress. They range from whatever they come up with, you know, from Smurfs through to bikies. So.
At the Outback Festival, it's going to be great, and Rollins Hospitality is the best in Queensland, mate. You can boil a Billy can, be I'm woman or I'm man. See Gillespie's old jalopy at its best. You can busk or join the kids, lots to do for Billy Liz with the Outback Aussie kids.
It is it's a great part of the festival. And, you know, you'll get very fit people come out that probably do triathlons and things like that. Oh, yeah, this will be right. We can do this, no worries. But it's a difference, you know, like they've got to carry fencing gear or tie a truck. They've got to wheel that down the street and the jack. And it's all, yeah, it's fitness and strength, but it's also a lot of thinking about what you're doing, which is going to be the best strategy to get it from one place to the next, you know. And it's not just the speed and that. It's all, yeah, you got to have, yeah, it's a bit of cunning, I'd say.
Look, the Outback Festival's been such it's been a wonderful event for Winton. To me, it's an event that's evolved over some 47 years, and to be part of this event has just been something that I've totally enjoyed.
I think it's heading in the right direction, very much so. I must admit I'm biased. I can't believe the atmosphere at the moment in the whole town, let alone without the festival. Bring the festival into it, and then I could just see it going back. It's got so much heart and foundation already, and the future is just so vibrant. There's so much changing and so many new things coming on board that people are excited about, and the Outback, well, Winton doesn't get much more than the Outback, and to have an Outback festival like this, I think it's fantastic. It's great. I can see it going a long way.
We have come a long way from the beginning some 47 years ago, and the Outback Festival wouldn't have happened only for the foresight of so many people who have had a vision for Winton. The Outback Festival is an event created by the community for community benefit and born from the need to diversify Winton's economy, and all began due to the 1960s 10-year drought. Without the many volunteers, past and present, that have been part of the festival's journey, this event wouldn't have happened. It has been one of fun and enjoyment, and good times and stories remain with so many people. As we say, out of adversity comes creativity, and for our 25th festival, we are bringing the past to life into the future with the digital light show of animation, installations and storytelling by people who have a passion for a town that can't stop making history.
With the Outback Aussie kids and their fest, we hope to see you all real soon underneath that western moon. You can yarn with the old timers for a while. You can swing your ladies round at the dances in the town and enjoy yourself in good old country style. At the Outback Festival, it's going to be great. So whip on out to Winton to Matilda Country Mate. In motor cars and big road trains, coaches, campers, bikes and planes, they're heading for the Outback once again. To a town that comes alive, full of heritage and pride. The Outback town of Winton is its name. For it's Outback Festival time once again.